Right, you can see where we left off, and we had a few comments and stuff like that. I'm not really too bothered about them today. I'll just I'll leave those because they're kind of like, you know, fine tune and stuff. But right now we just want to, you know, continue to make up ground. So I'm just bringing in that screenshot now. So I can delete this one. Right, so the areas of interest, obviously input, scroll bar, and you'll be able to sort of see we've kind of covered a lot of these. The one thing we haven't covered is the circular version of the frame, so that'll be interesting. Hopefully not an interesting challenge because we've already kind of done the hardest part, but I'm interested to see how easy it will be to do. So you might have to bear with me on that one. So yeah, if I remember correctly, we had the base frame set up. So let's just create an instance of that. And you can do that various ways. You know, you can just Control-C, Control-V, or you can, which I did here was Alt, click and drag, and then that does the same thing. So this will be the input field. Or in this case, let's just reuse what we've got here from this dropdown. Because essentially, actually, drop-downs are, you know, the behavior is very similar to, you know, input fields. You know, you have to your frame, your text, and not really a button, but the format is essentially the same. So I can delete these elements here. So let's see, delete the base frame. Don't need that, and we don't need that. Right, so yeah, everything was sort of set up as I'd expected to. I'm going to drag this back out and align it to the center using this one here. Okay, so replace the text for now, just so we know what we're looking at. Input field. And let's just do the same for this. Select item and option 1, option 2, same again. Okay, great. Now, the challenges with this are the circle. This here will be kind of a piece of cake, really. We'll just use a series of like Boolean operations and stuff like that to sort of chip away at, like, let's say a rectangle. And yeah, I think that should sort it. So let's start with the circle. I think I'll just roughly sort of eyeball the size. 46 seems to be quite nice. It leaves just enough space above the center aligned text, which will be good. And then we want to sample some gradients. So this should be relatively gradient heavy. And I'm wondering if we can sort of cut corners a little bit. So, I mean, we've got a lot of stuff going on here with these bevels and inner and outer frames and all this type of stuff, which is obviously a good thing for customization and kind of like the approach that we sort of had for this. But I just want to sample that gradient, and I'm going to paste that onto here. So I think I'm going to be approaching this in the same way, which is stacking strokes up. So this will be, let's see what we called it before, inner stroke 3, 2, 1, outer frame. Let's do, just remind myself what we're dealing with. So that was the outer frame. So you want to look at trying to name these to something that makes sense to you. I named these to what I think made sense to me at the time, but because there's just so many, you are going to sometimes have to go through and just sort of turn, you know, the preview off just to sort of see what's doing what, essentially. So that's the outer frame, and that's going to sit on top of everything. So the inner strokes will be behind it. Inner stroke, let's say that's 3. And that's going to not look like much has changed, but if I flip this, we should start to see a little bit more visual interest. And inner stroke 2, I guess. Yeah, let's go 2. to here. We're going to just ramp that up a little bit more. Not that way. So this point we want to do the little black cut or groove. Let's just see what we've got going on for that. Yeah, which is this one. So that's just a simple stroke with all 6 zeros, which is the hexadecimal code for black. Probably one of the easiest ones for me to remember, that and white actually. The other ones I always have to go and take a look at some reference for them. Okay, cool. I think I'm going to put that one on. No, in fact, I'm not. I'm going to backtrack a little bit. I'll be, just dropping that, and I'll bring this one back. Already that looks quite nice. It's not exactly what we've got, but there's something interesting going on with that inner stroke that's kind of like beveling in, which is quite nice, but not what we're really going for at the moment. So this would be inner stroke 1. So that's first, second, third, fourth, all outer. And that's just gonna come in roughly like this. And this one's gonna have to fill as well. So let's get a nice sample of the base, which is 171717. And then we'll go back up to here. Cool, that's the foundation for what we need, I think. Let's see, that's doing that, that's doing that. I wonder if we want another one there. We don't need any emojis. There we go. So that's the highest point. This will be the shadow point. We're gonna have to remove this as well. And this one also would be the highest point. So I'm actually just simplifying these just so we can see a little bit more what we're dealing with. And we've essentially got it. So already just a few things, a few, fake bevel effects and stuff like that. And we've got what we need. So now we just want to sort of match things up really. So going back to the details of the frame, just sampling this color. And for here we want to do the same, which I believe is that one and that one. I'm just going to replace these. And then when I replace that one, it's just going to reference the one color. Okay, the stroke, a little bit heavy maybe. So we could do maybe a 3.5. Yeah, that's nice. And then on this one, that'll be like a 5.5. Yeah, it's looking already pretty good. I'm happy with that. Some of the things we will need to do, I mean, this shape's going to be a lot more simpler than the bevel because we don't have like the beveled edges and stuff like that. So it's not gonna be as bloated as what we've got going on here with all of these, which is like really good. But one thing we might want to do is just put some effects over the top. So we did that with, I believe it was maybe the base frame, or it had a stroke, an effect on it. So let's do that. There we go. And some of these would have had the noise on them. Okay, cool. So what we could do is if we want to reuse this a lot, we could just create a like reusable style of it, if you like. So if we go here and then we hit add, so this could be generic grunge effect used for frame panels there. So we can create that. Now if we went through and we updated these, they're all going to pull from the same thing. And although it changed it quite drastically, you might want to create like a second version. So I actually think this one is is slightly different actually. It's got a slightly different highlight and than the other one. So this could be a good candidate for generic grunge highlight effect. And yeah, used for frames. There we go. Now, so that's the outer frame that will receive that effect. There we go, that looks quite nice. And the interesting bit will be the blue orb section. So guys, before we get back to the design process, I just wanted to quickly talk about this thing that I've just become really conscious of over the past few years, especially as like the internet's been blowing up and stuff like that. And that's the idea of like just watching content and hoping you're gonna improve by watching other people, such as myself, like making this. I watch other people create other things, whether it's how to edit your videos, or how to do Photoshop effects or Figma effects, or how to write a shader for Unity or something like that. And I've kind of fallen into the trap of watching these videos and then being like, oh yeah, that makes sense, and then not actually following through. So when it comes round to me needing to use that skill, I haven't actually practiced it at all. And in fact, I've completely forgotten like what the video or tutorial showed me. And I guess the message I'm sort of putting out is like, although I think it's awesome that everyone enjoys watching this type of content, I think you should try and put a little bit of time aside, whether it's just half an hour a day or an hour a week or something like that, depending on sort of your sort of timescales and your availability and all that stuff, to sort of work on your own thing, whether it's like watching following on from a video that you've watched previously and sort of giving it a try. You're not aiming for like perfection, and I think like that's the message really. Don't aim for perfection, because by doing that you're never going to be finished with it, or you might not even start. And I think that's the worst thing for an artist. Aim for imperfection, and I think through doing that you're gonna learn more, you're gonna grow more, and to be honest, you might even end up discovering something in the messy bits that allow you to sort of really discover what part of the process, it could be any process, that you enjoy. And yeah, I think had I have started doing that sooner, I think it would have been, I would have made more progress generally throughout my own career. But all we can do is just try and make small incremental steps. And I think going back to what we're working on, I think that's what we're doing here. We're not aiming for perfection, we're not aiming to sort of like build the entire thing in one sitting. We're trying to just sort of show up every day, and or I mean, it was supposed to be every day, but even my stuff got in, real life stuff got in the way. And yeah, just showing up and trying to make small progress on your passion projects or whatever it is that you're into at the moment. And I think that's the stuff that gets the ball rolling, and yeah, I think that's really important. So yeah, back to the video. Okay, so with all that out of the way, no, I think that's really useful. I wish someone had told me that earlier on in my career. In fact, I kind of wish someone told me that this weekend, because I spent a lot of time thinking about doing stuff and not actually doing anything. And as a creative, that's the ultimate torture, isn't it? Is thinking about things and never actually following through. So back to this glowy orb thing, which looks really quite nice. We just created an ellipse there, and we're gonna just sample the gradient stops here. So I think there's 3 stops, so we'll add 1 more in. And that's the wrong way, so we'll flip it. Cool, and the core is obviously like a deep blue, a nice deep sea blue. There we go, yeah. And we've got, so a soft glow at the top. I'm wondering if we can, well, there's two ways we could do this. We could either mask a soft gradient or a sort of a blurred ellipse or something like that, or we can just try and do it with a radial gradient. So let's try that first, and that'll be a fill. And then if we do our radial gradient, let's just ramp that, whack that up to white. So we need to increase this. Yeah, it looks fine for now. And we'll flip it. Let's zoom right in. I'm gonna bring that up to pinch it as well. Something like this. No, it's not quite white, there is a little bit of blue coming through. So if we just eyeball this, there's probably a bit too much green in that mix. That looks quite nice. In fact, that's too blue. Maybe that's too blue. Something like that. So that deals with the highlight, and we can refine this later if we want to. And then there's also, so if you imagined like this was glass, the light would pass or hit the top of it, and then it would try and pass through and it would sort of like refract and stuff like that. So we're going to do the same again. And I'll just, that was just Command D to duplicate that. Obviously you have to select it first. And then let's drag this down and drag that down. It's quite an interesting effect. This one's a little bit softer, so let's drop this down to about 40. There, that looks quite nice. You could go one step further if you wanted to, which is to do like an inner glow or something like that. See how that looks. So if we round that up to 100 just for the video. Set that to 0. And this should just enhance the that transition between the gradient a little bit, which will be quite nice. There, that looks like it. I'm happy with that. And the beauty of that is we did it all on one ellipse. So that's really cool. That's what we need. Right, so that's the input sorted. And yeah, we just need to do the icon. The icon, relatively straightforward, I think. Probably even more straightforward with the new Figma tools. They've introduced like stroke whips and stuff like that. So I'll be honest, I've not tried them yet. So let's, shall we give it a try? See what we can do. So we're going to go for that exclamation mark. And we've got a few options now. We've just created that initial stroke. So variable width, we can bend and all that type of stuff. So if I select this one, I'm going to aim for a variable width like this. See if I can round off anything. Does that do anything? Doesn't seem to do anything, but I wonder if... No. Oh, here we are. So we can get some interesting effects. Okay, so that was a bit odd how that worked. But it seemed like, what did I do? I must have... Oh, okay. Yeah, so I got the tip and then I dragged it out, and then yeah, it created this nice radius for us. I wonder if we can delete that. Would that be quite nice to keep? Because it adds a little bit of form to the top before it pinches down. Yeah, something like that. That's quite nice. Right, so we want to keep the bottom bit nicely rounded, which is what it's doing. And now for this, let's just do a nice simple notification door. I'm just gonna enter back into this and I'm gonna see if I can just adjust that width a little bit more. I think that went up to 2 pixels from what it was, which was 1. Okay. Yeah, something like that. This is a little bit flatter at the side. Maybe we can tweak what we've got. So if it was a bit flatter at the side, that would mean this part probably wouldn't be needed. Now let me turn off my snap to pixels. There. So that's 3.1. 3. There we go. That's the shape we're going for. Okay, and we'll select the 2 shapes. And ideally, I think I'm finished with this. I think he says just as he's about to change it again. I was just thinking maybe it would be nice to just extend a little bit further than the width of the ellipse below, just so it sort of like feels like it balances out the weight, which it does. Okay, right. So that's the like the alert icon, and I'm just gonna. In fact, I might just flatten these. One thing I'll have to do first is outline from stroke, so that's a right click, and then I can flatten these, and they're all part of one shape now, which will be easy for me to manage. Nice, so that's looking good. We've got a slightly different color going on than the white I selected, not for strokes though. There, that's looking good. Yeah. So we're going to be working on these details here now. And I think, like, we're free to change this if we want to. We don't have to, if you've got another design in mind, you don't have to necessarily follow exactly what I'm doing here. I'm going to remove that and we'll actually go for a triangle, and I'll see if I can just chip away at this a little bit to get an interesting effect. Something close enough. Okay, and subtract. Yeah, something like that. I've got like a little odd bit of artifact there. But that's fine. We can always fix that anyway by just adjusting the line here. Let's get right in there, see if we can snap to something good, useful. There we go. Now that creates something interesting, because that looks like it flows from the shape, as opposed to sort of what we had here, which is it sort of sits behind. So this might be quite interesting. Leave that for now. And then just a series of gradients again. Just gonna sample some of the gradient stops that we've got. Nice. Yeah, I think like this here, when I did this is an error. Like, I can't really understand, the light direction. The light's coming from the top there, but then for some reason this is in shadow, whereas this sort of feels like it'd be sitting back and sort of catching the light here as well, and then falling off. So technically it should be lighter into the darker part, kind of like what we've got here. So we'll roll with that and then we'll see how that how that looks. Let me just paste this. We're not in drop down select, are we? In fact, I messed that placement up, so I'm just going to undo. There we go. And then my drop down select is there, or input field. And I might reuse these quite a few times. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a panel trim, or a series of panel trims. I'm going to create components out of them, and I'm just essentially going to reuse them everywhere I want to. And if I want to make adjustments or different sort of variations and stuff like that, I'll be able to. So Command D, Shift H to flip horizontally. Yeah, and that's immediately better than that, I reckon. I'm happy with that. I do want to do a little bit of an edge highlight up here. But now I can just do it on this and it's going to happen everywhere, so I don't have to do it twice or 20 times or however many times, which is exactly what we want. So we'll do a little soft 0.5 gradient. So we're going to do it down to 0 transparency. Sample this color here. We want it relatively subtle. So something like that maybe could be quite nice. Yeah, it's looking really good. I'm really happy with the way it's it now kind of arcs over. Kind of like, you know, a nice vintage clock, you know, that your grandma's got on your mantelpiece or her mantelpiece. Yeah, nice, that's looking good. Right, so onto the tooltip. So we get a lot of these in RPGs and stuff like that, especially games like World of Warcraft, and you know, where you're inspecting what an action icon does or something like that, it tells you. So we need to copy this, bring some text over. And probably the same again for this is like, I'm going to create a reusable component out of this as well, because I'm seeing even just on this screenshot here, I can see it used 3 times. So yeah, we'll do that, and then we'll sort things out afterwards. So where are we? So that one and that one. Let's do create component. Tooltip frame, which can be used for the drop down as well. I'm going to leave it blank. I won't like put any text components inside, just in case, you know, later on you want to use it for something else. We can always add a frame around it and then put the contents inside, which is likely what we'll do now, to be honest. So we've got a tooltip frame, we've got our text, right click, frame these, tooltip, and I'm just going to stretch this out to fit the frame exactly. Nice. So that's looking as I want for now. We could use an auto layout if you want to as well. It's going to potentially go a little bit messy at the moment, or not. Sometimes everything jumps around whilst it sort of recalculates, but yeah, it didn't seem to this time. And we'll just need to make sure that our constraints left and right, top and bottom, and now everything will react how we want to. So let's open up Photoshop. And we can go in to the many layers of this, if it lets me. There we go. Double click didn't work. Just gonna copy that back over to Figma, paste it in. Nice, as we expected. Frame's a little bit chunkier than what we've got there. Really easy to change, as this is a as the base frame is actually, yeah, its own component. Copy that, bring that over. Probably should have done that before, so apologies for having to watch the same thing. Fill container. And left and right, top and bottom. And we're just going to shift that to the back. Okay, back on track. Sometimes I create components and then I end up like nesting the master component into some random UI element somewhere, and then I can't find it. But we want to try and keep our master components separately, and then eventually we'll be working towards a proper design system where everything lives. And everything can be managed from. And as you can sort of see, with these three shapes, we're already, heading into that territory now, which is really nice. Okay, so the panel trim, that was also of restore main components, so I must have deleted that. Right, so we've got our panel trim here. Now this is going to be the pointer. So I'll detach this. And I want to make sure that's a right angle, so I'm going to recreate this this rectangle or triangle, why not? Well, that wouldn't be a right angle, would it? Unless we faff around too much. Okay, take that shift and backspace. That deletes the node but doesn't mess with sort of like removing the path and disconnecting the fills and all that type of stuff. So it's looking good. Paste that into here. So that's now going to be, should be doing something. Yeah, delete that. Okay, and put that in place. Something like that's quite nice. Yeah, I like that. And also just remember from this, the light, always remember where your light is coming from. Doesn't have to be overly perfectly aligned, as long as the light's from here or there or even there consistently. It's the consistency that makes the difference, really. If you had some of your UI which is lit from here, then some that's lit from there with like a daylight type of strength, it's going to look really odd. And to be honest, I'm going to do a video on this soon, so yeah, you're going to have to hold me to that, and let me know in the comments if you do want to do a deep dive on lighting for your UI. Nice, that's looking good. Yeah, I'm happy with that. I think we've covered quite a bit. There's still lots to do, but the important thing is we're making progress. So yeah, let's leave this here, and we're gonna pick it up in the next video. So guys, hopefully you enjoyed this. A bit longer than usual. I think we're like nearly 40 minutes again. But I think, yeah, we've made some interesting progress, and we've continued to build our reusable components, and hopefully you took something away from the section where I was talking about you know, just getting started, really. Being a creative person, it's really important that you don't just sort of have too much input constantly. You need space to think, and you need space to, you know, sit with stuff and, you know, actually get started. You know, there's so many videos on YouTube about, or so many sort of like videos everywhere about, you know, that sort of like white canvas paralysis, you know, like that an artist, he's stood in front of his canvas and he's too afraid to get started in case he gets the mark wrong. And, you know, this channel, you know, it's not about that at all. It's about, you know, just getting stuck in and, you know, sharing your progress over on our Discord channel. A lot of, you know, really cool UI designers are over there sharing their progress and doing stuff that I wouldn't even imagine doing. They inspire me to try other things as well. You know, I've got people posting their artwork and, you know, all sorts of stuff that, you know, that sort of like inspires everyone to sort of create, you know, outside of the UI world, you know. And that's what we want to do. We don't want to be looking at UI from sort of this perspective. We want to be looking at it from like that perspective. You know, we want the 2020 vision, just so we can take everything in and then pick and choose what we need to, you know, sort of, you know, tweak and sort of customize based on, you know, I guess the story or the idea we're trying to tell. But enough on that. Hopefully you enjoyed this. If you did, obviously subscribe, give it a thumbs up and drop some comments below. And yeah, looking forward to the next one, and hopefully you're also looking forward to the next one. And if you have been inspired to actually just get started, please come over to the Discord and share your progress. It doesn't have to be this, but it has to be something that maybe, you know, you've been putting off for a long time. In my case, I've been putting off this for years, which is ridiculous when I think about it. But yeah, something you've been putting off for a while that you finally, you know, got started on. Let me know in the Discord. Looking forward to seeing you over there, as will everyone else. Yeah, everyone's really welcoming. And yeah, catch you soon, guys. Peace.